Hey friends, I'm in a churchyard in Rushock, England. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I'm paying my respects to John Bonham at his final resting place. This is John Bonham's grave right behind me. We are out in the middle of nowhere. It took quite a while to find this on country roads, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful setting. I don't know if you can see, but the hills just roll away forever. It's a beautiful part of England. If you're watching this, you already know this, but he's one of the most respected drummers ever. Just a great, great musician, which is so much more important than calling someone a guitar player or a drummer or whatever. You know, a musician. You know, someone who plays with the band, who's listening to everyone around them and is being very, very musical. You know, the feel that he played with, just amazing to me. So as I stand out here, I'm reminded of being a kid in rural Indiana, driving around in my buddy's 78 Trans Am, listening to Kashmir and just cranking it up. And man, it sounded like Bonham was in the back seat. His drums are so present, and so there's so much space. He would leave so much space, and his sound was always amazing. And to hear it as a teenager, you know, in a Trans Am driving down country roads in Indiana, you know, it's a place I'd like to go back to. It's a place I'd like to revisit. And if I'm driving around by myself in my practical, fuel-efficient, not so glamorous car these days, and Kashmir comes on, I crank it up, man, and I just imagine I'm a kid driving around the country roads. I think a big part of his sound and his drums sounding so spacious and so much air and sounding like they're in the back seat of your car when you crank it up is that Glenn Johns miking technique where there's three microphones. And you know, he's one of those, he's from the generation where he would not go and tell the engineer, oh, you got to turn up my bass drum, you know, I can't hear my kick drum or whatever like that. He's a musician. He would mix himself when he played. You know, he's putting down onto tape a mixed drum track where you don't have to fiddle with it. So Glenn Johns could put three mics out and wouldn't have to close mic anything. I really miss those days of rock and roll drumming and rock and roll recording. And John Bonham is a poster child for that. When I was in high school, you know, playing in your garage band, we would cover rock and roll, and the drummer, you know, they tried to get it right. Maybe they played it perfectly, which I doubt, but maybe they played it perfectly. Us guitar players, we never knew when to come in because we couldn't get the count from that. And for years, you know, you had to memorize it and then you get it, but I was never really counting. I just knew where it came in finally. And years and years later in Nashville, some of my session musician friends would talk about how, no man, John Bonham was basing his drum part off of the intro of Johnny B. Good. So he's playing Chuck Berry's guitar riff on Johnny B. Good on the drums. And if you think about it like that, you know right where to come in. It all works perfectly. I think that's beautiful. Says a hell of a lot about the musicianship and the creativity that Bonham had. So if you're in a high school band and you're trying to learn that, I hope that helps you. As far as hitting those Robert Plant notes, I cannot help you with that one bit. So as I'm standing out here in this beautiful old church courtyard, paying my respects to John Bonham, I'm thinking about a friend of mine who has this story about how he wouldn't go see Led Zeppelin with Fleetwood Mac opening up because $10 was too much to pay to see anybody. Nobody's worth $10, which that was a long, long time ago. That was the late 70s or maybe the mid 70s. And we get a big kick out of that when my buddy tells that story now. But that pops into my head while we're out here. On the sad side and on the real side of things, his death was very tragic, very sad. I read just this morning, I don't know how I didn't know this, but he drank 16 shots of vodka with his breakfast, and then throughout the rest of the day ended up drinking a total of 40 shots of vodka, and that's the day that he died. And that is just so sad. I wish somebody could have intervened and helped. And if somebody out there is struggling with things like that right now, please reach out to somebody and get some help. We need you around, and your family needs you around. We like to get you healthy and on a better track. But maybe you guys can tell me what your favorite Led Zeppelin track is. I'm not really sure. I always turn up Kashmir. I turn up Fool in the Rain. You know, All of My Love. God, there's so many. Dazed and Confused. There's something just beautiful and mournful about that, or What Is and What Should Never Be. I don't think I can choose just one, but there's a lot that I'll turn up. Classic rock over the years has made me a little worn out on Led Zeppelin, and I had a big long period where I did not listen to them at all. But I haven't listened to classic rock radio for so many years that now when I turn it on and I hear one of those little bit deeper cuts of Led Zeppelin, you know, it's great. I should also mention, I want to thank my buddy Andy Swan for driving me out here in the middle of nowhere just so I could pay my respects to John Bonham. So tell me down below what your favorite John Bonham performance is. Maybe we can have a little John Bonham love fest, and I will catch you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.